Good morning and welcome to another episode of Rising. We have a fantastic show planned for you today, and Batya Ungar-Sargon is co-hosting the show. It's wonderful to see you, Batya.
Thank you. It's so great to be here with you, Robby.
What are we talking about today?
Well, a suspected Chinese surveillance balloon was shot down by the U.S. military over the coast of South Carolina over the weekend. Pentagon officials claimed the balloon had been drifting over the continental United States for a week before being taken down over the Atlantic Ocean. Chinese officials have slammed the debacle as a, quote, unnecessary attack on a civilian unmanned airship by force, noting that Beijing reserves the right to make further responses that are, quote, necessary. Let's hear what President Biden had to say on Saturday.
Briefed on the balloon, I ordered the Pentagon to shoot it down on Wednesday as soon as possible. They decided, without doing damage to anyone on the ground, they decided that the best time to do that was as it got over water outside within the 12-mile limit. They successfully took it down, and I want to compliment our aviators who did it, and we'll have more to report on this a little later. Thank you.
Mr. President, what did you say about China? What's your message to China?
You were saying the recommendation was from your national security.
I told them to shoot it down.
On Wednesday.
On Wednesday.
But the recommendation
They said to me, let's wait till the safest place to do it.
What does this mean for China, relations with China?
All right, short and sweet.
Joining us now to weigh in on what's next in the fallout from this incident is senior fellow and military expert at Defense Priorities, retired Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis. Welcome, Lieutenant Colonel, and thank you for your service.
Thank you for having me.
Great. We're so happy to have you. Let's start with, what was your initial response to the news of the Chinese balloon? And has anything that has happened or emerged since then changed those initial views?
You know, honestly, my initial view is pretty much the same as where it still is. I think this was a big overreaction. I don't think that we have, I think we made too big of a deal about it. And as the Washington Post is reporting this morning, for example, this was apparently happened 3 times at various links during the Trump administration and once earlier in the Biden administration. And look, the bottom line is we spy on China 24/7. They spy on us. I mean, that's what nations do. They try to get intelligence. And certainly China has a lot better capacities to do it than this balloon. I actually think that this was probably intended to be some sort of a message from China. I think that it badly backfired because it was coming about, just literally hours before Blinken was supposed to have gone to China for his first meeting with his Chinese counterpart. And then he canceled that. And the fact that this balloon hovered over Billings, Montana, over our strategic air base there and over some of our nuclear strategic missile silos. I think that they're trying to send some sort of a message. It's unclear what they thought they were going to communicate, but I think it backfired pretty badly. The thing that I worry about, though, is that Blinken canceled the trip. And look, there's some bigger issues that need to be resolved between China and the United States, and I hope he puts that back on the agenda pretty quick.
What information could this balloon have possibly been gathering? Obviously, they knew the locations of, what you just spelled out already, right? The balloon didn't happen across those locations. So what exactly would they be getting that we should be concerned about?
Yeah, that's one of the things we're hoping to find out, if they can get that debris out of the water after they shot it down. And I really do hope that could actually turn out to be a kind of a boon for us in intelligence capacity. But I mean, you can count on the fact that it probably was trying to gather signals intelligence. It was almost certainly taking photographs, videos, et cetera, of those locations that were underneath it. I mean, that's pretty standard equipment for these kinds of devices. But look, as I pointed out, it's not as good as their low Earth orbit satellites, which can have crystal clear vision down on the U.S. territory there. And so that's why, again, I think that this is a little bit of an overreaction because it's not that big a deal. Our security was never at risk because of this.
And they had to know. So would they have known that we were going to detect it? I mean, it seemed obvious given the trajectory of this balloon, we were going to notice it. People noticed it from the ground, right? So they had to know that doing this, we were going to see it. We were going to be upset. So everything that kind of happened was sort of predictable from their standpoint, but they did it anyway, which I guess speaks to what you're saying is that it was some kind of message.
Yeah, I mean, it really has to be because, I mean, obviously something that's, basically just wafting over the country that's as big as 3 school buses is not going to skip our attention. And we tracked it the whole way. But that's why I suggested it was a kind of a ham-fisted effort. And I think they're very embarrassed by it. I mean, you look at their response, and it's been pretty tame compared to what China has done on other issues. And I think they're embarrassed about this, and they just want to put it behind them and move on.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of wonder at you saying, with all due respect and with a lot of humility, at you saying that this is not a big deal. I think the fact that I totally agree with you. It seems that this was intentional. It was sort of designed to be caught. You can see that in their response, which, as you know, has been sort of conciliatory. And also the brazenness of it, to me, that doesn't make me feel better. That makes me feel a lot worse, like it was some sort of power move to suggest, we're not afraid of letting you know that we're doing. It's not just that we're spying on you that everybody knows, but that we're willing to do it to get caught spying on you. That suggests to me a level of brazenness that seems to me to be a sort of escalation, something new. No, what am I missing here?
Yeah, well, if that was their intent, then it was a really bad effort because look, we're powerful, and this stuff it's a little balloon. I mean, the skit on Saturday Night Live, I thought really captured the real seriousness of this, that it's not very much. And I think it just embarrassed Beijing because we were never at threat, never at risk. And we are the bigger, stronger player here. And if they thought this was going to, make us embarrassed or if it was going to make us cow or something, it was a bad miscalculation because it's not. And I think that this has showed that our power remains unchecked and unquestioned.
And this is coming obviously at a time of, increasing, I don't know exactly how to describe it, some increasing tensions. Obviously we had, Nancy Pelosi's visit from some months back and sparking a discussion of, what would the U.S. do? Our stated policy to defend Taiwan, but that policy kind of being, I think, just designed to prevent China from doing anything. If they were to actually do something, would we intervene and then potentially cause, a massive, potentially nuclear confrontation? So obviously things between America and China are far from ideal right now, and we're upset with China on a number of fronts, economic fronts, et cetera. Their treatment of the Uyghurs, the demands they make of tech companies and entertainment companies that do business in China, engage in self-censorship. It just seems like it's on a very bad trajectory. What needs to be done from a diplomatic standpoint to move past this and then also move us to a position where we're not on a path to a confrontation like what we're having with Russia over Ukraine?
Yeah, Robby, you hit it square on the head. That is my concern, that this issue by itself with the balloon is relatively minor, but there are some other issues on the table that are not minor. And aside from that good list you just put down there, you can also add to it that on the military front, there seems to be a ratcheting up of tensions in both directions, which I think is why, Blinken needed to go there so that we could address some of this and cool some of these tensions. I mean, in just the last, number of days, you have the United States has made a deal to use 4 additional bases in the Philippines. We have opened a Marine base in Guam for the first time in 70 years in that area. We're expanding our military bases in a capacity in Japan. China, on the other side, is also ramping up its military capacity. It's using more ships to go close to Taiwan. It's certainly overflying with more fighter jets, sending now drones into some of the airspace there, one of which was, I believe, shut down not long ago. So these things keep looking like it's sort of a ratcheting up of tensions. And before we stumble into some kind of war, which would be catastrophic for American interests, we need to get this under control. And that's why diplomacy at the highest levels is a requirement.
Yeah, I honestly, I agree with you. I think the bigger threat that China poses to America is much more on the domestic front in terms of the economy, in terms of jobs, which is something that we have complete control over, in terms of TikTok, right? In terms of the influence that is having over our young people. I mean, that seems to me to be sort of where the real threat is, not the military front. But when they're doing things like this, I mean, to me, this is a perfect opportunity to say, look, we don't like that you did this and we don't like these other things. Let's clarify what this relationship is really about. Do you think that President Biden has has the wherewithal to take the right steps, and what should those steps be?
Well, I certainly hope he does. And I thought sending Blinken over there was a long delayed step that should have been taken, which is, why I'm so adamant that it was a mistake to have canceled that and needs to be redone quickly, because as you're pointing out, there's lots of issues, not on the military front. And military is not going to solve any of those issues. Sending a bunch of ships through the straits and the freedom of navigations and threatening rhetoric, et cetera, that's not going to stop any of those issues that you talked about, which do need to be addressed in many cases. And you know what? We have to outcompete China. We got to push back on these areas in the right environment, which is the economic environment, which is the diplomatic environment. And we need to be more engaged and not saying, hey, we're not going to talk to you unless everything's perfect, because that doesn't help us out. We've got to try to solve these things. And that also includes talking to all of our Asian neighbors and and our other friends and allies in the area, because it's not just a bilateral issue. A lot of these things can be solved by just out-competing China and going, and beating them at their own game. And I like that path a lot better.
Lieutenant Colonel, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate it so much.
Always my pleasure. Thanks.
Next up, we'll tell you what's on our radars. Stick around.